tension, insert whatever adjective you see the most, of getting any dating advice from social media. Now, this is a double-edged sword, knowing that all of y'all have social media platforms and you are actively doing this work. So, put your best foot forward there.
Bad idea. Right. I think if we think about what social media represents, simply the ability for the average person to share what they have to say with a plan. Right? That's never really existed before. And so what you have now is it becoming difficult to distinguish what makes you go, and things that are actually going to benefit your life, right? And so I find that if anyone is going to evaluate quote unquote dating content, the first thing is to check the sources, reality, like what is their life like within that area, right? Because there are a lot of, oh yeah, do this and do that, and you look behind the curtains and it's like, why are people listening to you again, right? So there's that. There are a lot of great people on there as well, a lot of great stuff. It's just, I think it's difficult for the consumer to discern what's accurate, worthwhile things to listen to. And I've found a way to figure out, like, how do you solve something like that? I think it's the case in any industry, right? Whether it's money making, whether it's, oh yeah, let me tell you how to do this. And you actually buy into whatever the course is or the program is, and it's nonsense. So discernment is something that I definitely recommend. A lot of great people, a lot of people who don't know what they're talking about. But I'd say that the biggest risk factor is seeing if somebody's leading from resentment or you're leading from the desire to create unity between people. Because many of the things I hear are actually about why you should leave the person you're with and why you should avoid every red flag in the book. You need to be, 100% all this nonsense.
Throw the whole man away.
Right, like it's just this war movement, right? It's on both sides. And human beings just don't work like that. There is no pure green flag person or pure red flag person. It's all contextual. And so some maturity needs to be brought to the space to remember that while there's a dating crisis and be in pain, dating does not automatically mean now the person needs to be perfect. And in the slightest mistake, slight lack of communication, it's red flag, they're gonna hurt me, they're toxic, and then that's kind of a lot of what I'm hearing, and I'm like, yeah, very, very unhealthy. So discerning whether or not the person is looking to bring people together or separate them. Yeah.
Alright, yeah, I agree with that. And men usually only come to me when there's a problem either within the relationship that they're in or they're trying to grieve a relationship that's ending. So it's a lot of processing emotions, and that social media has not been as much of a factor in that regard. So just trying to let it go and move forward, or just problem solve a specific issue, get confident, and move on. Men I've noticed are much more problem solving oriented. If there's a problem, they want to just get it over with, move on, be done, which is, it's kind of nice. Wish I could do that. Women, it's a little more complicated because we buy into the vision. So what I've noticed with women when they come to me and they've been on social media, it's either one of two extremes. Either it's everything is bad relationships are bad, it's better just to be celibate and never be in a relationship again. Or they see people running off to Paris and they're like, this is our 1 month anniversary, and they're like, how come I don't have that yet? So women are dealing with extreme visions of either men are evil, stay away, or they're gonna fly you out to Europe every other weekend and buy you Mercedes, and there's a lot of expectations that women already have a lot of pressure as it is. We're coming out of this mindset, I believe, but a lot of women are raised to believe that their self-worth comes from their husband and kids. And we're working really hard to come out of that because we know that we're worth more than that. But it's still ingrained, and we still have our relatives pushing that on us all the time. So not only do we feel that old school pressure of whoever's around you is what builds your worth and your value, and then we're seeing online that like somebody should be sweeping you off your feet or they shouldn't be in your life at all. So it's confusing and it's hard to know how to find something that's real versus something that looks good on paper.
2 points here specific to the research that we do and what we understand from social media that these people take with them in coming into dating, no matter what context it is. The first part of it is the research that I've been doing a lot more recently goes into details about someone's stated preferences, which is what they will say they want. So take, for example, if you're telling a friend, hey, this is the kind of person I'm looking for, or in a dating app when you're setting these filters. These are your stated preferences. What we've noticed without fail is that there's actually a very large gap for every single one of us, myself included, in what your stated preferences and what your observed preferences. So you could state a whole bunch of things that you say, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I want. But if we were to put you in a group of people or a large setting where that was available to you, we observe what you're filtering for then, and it's actually very different than from what you tell yourself you're stating. And that's because of the image you have of yourself within you, right? And how social media plays into this is the second part of it, is unfortunately, but in some cases for good reason, sensationalism is what drives a lot of algorithms, right? And so when someone has a nuanced take or a very strong opinion about something that both of these people spoke to just recently, is when people are looking to once again self-soothe, they're likely to take in extreme information that's been sensationalized and it perpetuates, and now it's on a lot of algorithms. It's very rare that regulated, easy, understandable information reaches you even, because it's kind of boring, You want to hear the crazy take, you want to hear the men shit, you want to hear the, females need to be valued this way and you need to be an alpha. Like there's all these extremes, and that's what we're exposed to, unfortunately, because for a lot of these platforms, they make money off the sensationalism of keeping people reeled into that kind of stuff. So that bleeds into people's image of what they want, what they think about others, or, the kind of person they're trying to attract, or situations that they're in, whether it's like the whole population is trash, or like, hey, this one person did this a certain way, he was, sitting to the left when he was talking to me, so that must mean, like they hear a lot of this stuff off social media, and we come to realize in real life that actually doesn't play into it, but when you come in with that, you have to deconstruct all of that to then be able to move forward and have something productive. And even if you don't deconstruct it, just acknowledge it. And it's really hard to do because you've built up this bias from everything you've been consuming because it's how you feel now. So.
We're making this connection, but I can't help myself. Heated rivalry is having such a steamy moment right now. And I don't know what y'all's platforms look like, but it's all in the content I'm getting. So for those of y'all that don't know, Heated Rivalry is a male-male romance TV show. It's on HBO. HBO, you probably know where it is. But one of the things in that relationship, it spans 10 years, but one of the things that keeps the relationship alive is texting, social media, things like this. But I think the thing that I caught, and that I am making the connection to the things that I'm hearing y'all say, is that these two people met in person first. And so Derek, what I'm hearing you say is meeting in person helps you filter what you're actually looking for versus what your stated preferences are. Adela, you also said, like, in-person communication is paramount to anything else. How does this, like, let's dig in a little bit deeper to meeting someone in person and then translating that relationship online. Any additional thoughts around that? Like, let's double click into it to use some corporate slang. And then Carla, let's start with you.
All right, so yeah, I want clarification too. So we're looking at how social media is playing into what we're looking at when we meet people. Okay, so the older you get, the more you have checklists, especially women. You know, when you're women are really working to being high earning achievers now, especially, you know, in cities like Atlanta or New York. Like, you want your own success and you want somebody who matches you. And then you want the idea of somebody who's also tall, rich, good looking, you know, all those things. So you want somebody who matches the success you're working towards, and you want somebody who looks the part as well, that can also kind of spoil you. And of course, there's nothing wrong with these things. But realistically, love is never going to come from what looks good on a social media post, and that's where a lot of people are really struggling right now. Love is in the little moments, but also really the hard moments. Does that work? Because we tend to look at relationships that have been successful by how long have you been with somebody, what things have you checked off on the list, and what accomplishments have you also achieved in that. I don't know.
Press the button on it to turn off, turn back on. Like I said,
See.
let's see if that works. Otherwise, we'll get on our friend Dale back in a second.
All right, I'll just keep going.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So it's a lot of that, and what I have found love comes from working with people. What proves if love is sustainable isn't the number of years together, not the kids you have, not the car, not the house. It's who are you together in the tough moments. Because there's a lot of moments in long-term relationships and marriages that people don't talk about because it's not sexy. You know, what do you do when you go through a period where you and your partner are not having sex? What do you do when you go through moments where you have a sick child, or what if the breadwinner gets sick? Like, there's so many things that just happen because we're human and we're in this life that will get thrown at us. And how you come together in those moments, that determines, I believe, the true love that you have for each other. If you can talk kindly to each other in these moments and problem solve and work through it and come out stronger, you have a great relationship. And sometimes those relationships don't make it to 50 years, but I still consider those relationships to be more successful than people that get married for 60 years. Because if you can work through problems together, you can only imagine the kind of success you can have. But we need to start measuring love by those difficult, tough parts of life and not just the luxurious, monumental, picture-worthy moments.
In context to how dating translates into social media, we've also had some findings as well with like smaller groups of individuals that'll take conversations that they have had in person or met through online and see how it pans out for them. Something that we realize is, I want to know by a show of hands who here deals with marketing or is a marketer or just really likes marketing. Can we get a show of hands? It makes sense. This is the forum for it. I'm glad. You guys have a unique challenge. Like I said, even if it's something you're just keenly interested in, when someone gives you a marketing problem, what's one of the first things that you try to identify? Or you have a client that you're doing marketing for. Can anyone just, raise your hand, name out one of the things that you would ask on their onboarding?
Yeah, what's the budget looking like?
What's the budget? That's a good question.
What is your voice? Like, how do people come across?
What's your voice?
Yeah. How is it being measured?
How is it being measured? Very good. Any other ones?
Who's your audience?
Who is Raven? Thank you. I mean, all of these answers completely play in, but I think when we think about dating, right, in social media, we look at it the lens from how are you marketing yourself, right? I was completely a victim to this. I didn't know. I thought my profile said, hey, this is a dude who is ready for a long-term relationship at the time when all my friends were auditing it, right? But from the people who were my target demographic, that was not what they were reading off of it. So it was a marketing failure on my part. It did not entirely read as this person wanted to do that. Quite the opposite, or if not somewhere in the middle, but it's mixed messaging. And we know what happens when you have mixed messaging in something you're trying to market, right? I didn't test this with the demographic, I didn't validate it. I didn't even ask myself in my own marketing onboarding, who is my target demographic? I left it for as something for me. And that's something to consider with social media and relationships is if you are trying to date or find yourself in a relationship or continue something, is the way that you're marketing self-reflective of what you are trying to attract. And I'll tell you why that's tough. It's tough because a lot of times we put out on social media how we want to see ourselves. It's a little scrapbook for us, right? So we may be showing out in the ways that we like to validate ourselves, not necessarily to attract for what we're looking for. And so that disconnect happens when you move from an app or just conversation to, hey, what's your Instagram? Which is, by the way, the most common method in which people will start exchanging personal information. Whether you're already talking on text or through an app, an easy, smooth way to transition into let's be a part of each other's lives a little more and get to learn about you is exchanging, give me your Insta. But guess what? Is that individual then seeing what you would have hoped for them to see? Probably not the case. And so then it happens where you make an assumption based off the marketing that is presented to you, and it doesn't connect, and now you're in your head, the other person isn't, more communication breakdowns happen, and now you're just confused. And after some point of confusion fatigue, it's not even appealing to you anymore. So I think that's how social media affects the relationships and the stuff that we measure and kind of track for.
Are we allowed to ask questions?
You can, actually, we are at the point in time where I should be opening it up to questions, but I do want to give Vidal the mic for this last question. So,
I actually don't have much to share on this. They kind of covered everything. The only thing I'd say is that the channel of communication makes a difference, primarily because of the memes that when we're talking about the three conversations. So so when you're interpreting what somebody's saying, you're paying attention to their body language, and their body language is usually telling you whether or not their internal conversation matches what they're saying, right? That's why you're talking to someone and you're like, something about just incongruence with their internal conversation and their verbal or their body language, right? So if I was here like, yeah, so you just gotta get out there, man. My body language would give off something very different than what you would expect of me. So with social media, what replaces, you could say, the bodily conversation a lot of times is what you see. What do they look like? What do they dress like? Who are they around? What was their story yesterday? Where were they at? And you're just inferring all these things that weren't from a conversation. And so that can create problems of misinterpretation because it's really, all you have to go off is some pictures and a couple words, and you have to fill in the blank. So, yeah.
thanks you guys so much.
I want to respond a little bit, but
You can.
Because this is actually very relevant to a conversation I was having probably about a month and a half ago. So to give some understanding, what you mentioned about authenticity is actually perfect because in any given moment we are balancing between two forces. How authentic, I'll put it in questions, how authentic am I going to be? And how in alignment with group cohesion, let me say this in this simple. How much am I going to, conform isn't the word, but I know conforming has a negative statement to it, but how much am I going to make sure that I'm getting along with everybody? Because we're always in a social context. So you can't divorce. There's no such thing as just pure isolation unless you're going in the woods and eating that on planet Earth. So social contexts are fundamental. And so the individual has to see, okay, what line am I going to balance, like you're saying? Am I going to, let's say you have a particular woman in mind as your ideal, there has to be a consideration of what she values too, right? So if it's complete imbalance of, well, it's just about my authentic expression, even if that's 5 selfies in a row, then there has to be an objective going like, okay, well, I have to consider what women are attracted to as well, without compromising too much of my authentic expression, because then you're going to attract women that may be great or a great match for the marketing that you had using that term, but might not be great companions. The chemistry might be poor, right? So what I suggest typically is for a guy to lean to as much authenticity as he can get away with, right? So maybe 80%, and 20% technicality, a consideration of what women are attracted to, right? Otherwise, well, you know, I'm going on a date, I'm going to wear shorts and a white beard. I mean, that's authentic, but for the woman to be like, I don't think this is the guy for me, and then doing that repeatedly, after a while there has to be some consideration of, well, am I the only one in this relationship, or does what women find attractive matter in the same way that women have to consider, well, what do men find attractive and, you know, dress appropriately. So for the dating app thing, it's more about balancing as much authenticity as you can get away with without negating what women desire.
I'm I'm so sorry. I just can't help myself.
So there's this thing in marketing called brand alignment. And so what you're talking about, Vidal, is making sure that your authenticity of who you are as a brand. So all of us have an individual brand. I got a brand, you got a brand, you got a brand, whatever. But my brand needs to be really, in order for me to have an authentic brand, it needs to be aligned with who I am. So when you see Hot Olive Agency, which is my own personal social media agency, and you interact with me formally, whether that is I put out an ad and say, do you need someone to do your social media? It needs to be cheeky the way that I just did that, because that's authentic to who I am. So if you are averse to marketing, that's authentic to who you are, but you can't escape the marketing, because that's you still have some brand alignment there. Does that make sense?
No, I would argue, honestly, I would not say argue, but I am disagreeing. I think that,
We've disagreed since we were little, so.
yeah, I just think that when you're inauthentic, you're not necessarily attracting what you really want in general. Like, so I feel like, especially in relationships, from what I've seen, friends,
Versus what's called consideration, right? When you're hearing the word authentic, what do you mean by that? Being 100% yourself 100% of the time, regardless of the context.
ideally, but like to your earlier point, there are
Context.
Yeah.
You gotta acknowledge context. So the question then is, when are you not in a context other than when you're by yourself?
like, for instance, being black.
Mhm.
If I'm at work, I'm
Mhm.
probably not my true authentic self at
Yeah.
all times, because it's not accepted where I work. Like, it's not. If I'm my authentic self, like, and yeah, definitely that one. Yeah, everywhere, honestly, in America. But not to go on that tangent.
That's a different thing.
But to your point, I agree with the context piece of it. So, like, just using an example, I'm not always my true authentic self.
Right. And so, and then you made a good point about, we're going to take it away from commercial relationships, which are transactional. You do this only if I get this. So, in those relationships, exchange relationships are exchanges, but not all exchanges are transactional. So if I do this, I only do it because I'm getting this. That's a commercial or transactional relationship. An intimate relationship, exchange is not modulated by tallies. So when you do something for your mom or something, you're not keeping score because exchange is modulated by how much you care about the person, not by how much money they gave you or how much they helped you back and forth. So when you mention the authenticity piece, inauthenticity isn't what I'm arguing for. It's the ratio of consideration for the person that you're going to be with. So if you're in a relationship with a woman and it's all about your authenticity 100% of the time with no consideration, because consideration doesn't necessarily mean being inauthentic. It means, okay, well, I'm going to acknowledge the context. So you may meet her mother-in-law and she kind of said something that if your full authenticity came out, we're going to blow this whole thing up. And you go, okay, this is my partner's mother. How far am I going to go with this authenticity game? So in context, we have to consider, okay, well, I'm here. How real am I going to keep it? And if you go around, you can choose to 100% of the time be 100% authentic without context being considered, but you're going to understand, you're going to find a person, and this is what I said to that client, you can design your app to where it's 100% authentic. You will, if you meet somebody to match with you, you guys will get along amazingly, but it's going to decrease your match rate dramatically. If we alter, not to be inauthentic, but it's like, I asked him, what are you willing to not have somebody know about you? And he's like, actually, a lot of these things are just random. They aren't, I just picked some random pictures and threw them up. So there wasn't really any consideration for the female perspective. And so if you're gonna be in an intimate relationship, if you were with a woman and she's like, it's all about my authenticity, I'm a fart when I want, I don't care where we are, I'm gonna do. That's authentic. But you may go, come on, babe. Right? Well, I'm keeping it real. So there has to be, I don't know how it would happen if there is zero consideration, which would require, in some sense, a decrease in authenticity because of the context. But not being like lying, I don't agree with that. Where your values don't match and you're pretending they do for sex, typically. Right? So that's different. Hopefully that clarifies.
So on dating apps, there's a lot of different types of profiles with men, and it's all across the board. And women, when they're looking for men who are confident in whatever they have, whoever they are, whatever they're doing. They're confident. They have friends. They feel it looks like they have a good social life. They have a good, like there's points about them where they're part of a community. They're taking care of their family. Like they have protector, provider roles in whatever context that is, authentic to them. And there's a lot of profiles where guys I think they're trying to be so authentic that it's confusing because you're just swiping. You're not talking to anybody. You're not getting to know somebody. So they put some like weird pictures and like some inside jokes that you don't understand. So it's like they're being authentic, but it feels like they're talking to somebody you don't know. And it's kind of like you just want to know, who are you when you're authentic and your most confident self? Who are you as a provider and protector? So it's not that you shouldn't be authentic, but you want to showcase in a dating profile those authentic aspects of you. Are you a community member? Are you taking care of your family? Are you traveling? What kind of business are you in? Are you proud of that? Where are you confident as a man? And we all have weird sides to ourselves. We all kind of have quirks and a weird, quirky nature, but those are the things that you want to showcase on a first and second date, so people kind of know, like, you can fulfill the basic needs. Women's basic needs are they want a man who's a protector, a provider, and they're confident they can do those things. And then they can get to know the quirks, and they get to know the things about you that matter and that make you you, and then they're open to really taking those in and making it a part of them too. But they just want to know that those basic needs are covered first. It's like a matter of safety, not personal slight or anything.
That's how I dealt with this. I can tell you what I see from the data. Once again, this goes back to the stated and observed preferences. A part of us likes to think that we want to search for nurturing, we want to search for someone who's a good long-term partner, but when you're put out into the general public, what someone will perceive of you or what you, without even realizing, will perceive of someone else is initially, no matter what you say to yourself, and no matter how much you tell yourself that you are not shallow, will always be physical appearance. And time again, that has been proven. The further someone says that it's further away from what they judge for, it means it's likely a lot closer than what they think. That's what I've learned from the data, but I'll let these two contribute as well.
I mean, yeah. We're all pretty shallow.
Okay, I'll make this real quick. I can't, as I said, I don't tend to focus a ton in Atlanta. I'm going to be changing that. But I am a person in Atlanta. And I have a lot of friends here that come to me for this stuff. So there's a continuum that if a woman is looking, because you're right, we'll do it like that. Women are categorizing men, and I don't think guys are aware of this fact, right? So the grid looks something like there is long-term, short-term, sexual, platonic. So you may have, if you're her, what's called her first choice, high sexual attraction, and then she has high non-sexual chemistry with you, you're going to be long-term, husband category. And what you will find from that woman is she'll be a virgin who's never been with a man. That's how she will present herself, right? The best virgin.
That's like a jackpot situation.
Yeah, I've never heard of sex, right? But meaning you will like, if she perceives you that way, you will get the version of the woman that is most likely to be like, oh man, what a wonderful wife. I think if you are short term, but she's highly sexually attracted to you, you're gonna be in usually that's gonna be a guy that's high sex appeal, low social appeal. So maybe income isn't there, maybe he's a horrible person, maybe the values don't align, and that's more of your hookup. They're called sneaky links. They're called.
That's a good
That's
word.
gonna be a category where I'm gonna keep you in the back door. Maybe people know about us, maybe they don't. But then you have the grid of long-term platonic. You have short-term platonic. Short-term platonic are usually you meet somebody.
Long-term platonic, that's like a waste of time, right? Basically.
If you plan to be with her, yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Time wasted.
However, that doesn't necessarily mean that a woman won't marry a man within long-term platonic. It just means she
So
doesn't
is
have.
long-time platonic, does that equate to friends with benefits or no?
Is your friend over?
A friend. Oh, okay.
Well, you can be in the friend zone. You can be in the friend zone, but that doesn't mean a woman won't be with a man she's not sexually attracted to if he has other benefits to him, right? So, but what you need is somebody, and what I find women in Atlanta desire, the number one thing for why they're not pleased is either they can't find a man they're attracted to and has the other non-sexual things, or they find guys that they're not attracted to that has those things, but it's like, how do I push past the fact that I have no interest sexually in him? And it matters a lot. Looks is what we call it, I'll just call it what it is, it's just sex appeal. But yeah, I think that's a really big factor. So going out of town, I don't know how women are dating, but I know the guys are leaving because, from my understanding, the ones that are tired of being in the category of long-term platonic are like, okay, I'm going somewhere else. Maybe they'll love me there. That's from my understanding of that. So that's what I was
Such Great answers.
Just to back off what Vidal said is very fresh on everyone's mind. A part of the reason you see this migration happening is what are they doing? They are putting themselves in a different context to find success, is what is really happening behind the mechanics of it.
Yeah, I agree with both of that. And for women, it's like women. A lot of women I talk to in general feel like the dating pool is very stale or one note in Atlanta, and so the more somebody, you could go to another state, but if women are going to other countries, it's because they're feeling voids that they feel they cannot get here, that they would need to go as far away as possible to find. Basically doesn't exist in America anymore. So it depends how deep those voids are and how much they have given up trying, basically.
Yeah, she's cool. This one's really short. This is partly why I don't work with women. Women are in a different context because you guys are the approachees. So if a woman's in a room and she sees men that she would be open, let's say there are 3 guys. One is like, one is like, yes, one is like, no, right? She can't control who approaches her. And who didn't approach her, she doesn't know why. So she's putting herself in context repeatedly where it's kind of hopefully the guy I want approaches me. And then from that, she has to hope he is what she thinks he is. And so it's super hard to control for that. So honestly, I oftentimes don't know what to say to women.
You just keep a roll this men when these questions.
Right.
But like, what I'd always say to women is to consider what are your deal breakers and flipping those. I find that women will have these lists and lists and lists. That's not your list. Your real list, if, let's say a guy has 99 of the things and he has 1 deal breaker. That's why it's called a deal breaker, because he broke the deal. So rather than doing all that, list your actual deal breakers and then flip them. That's your actual list. Right, so he needs to be a certain, if he's this and this and this, I don't want him. Okay? Then flip them. And that will give you a way clearer picture of what you're looking for. As far as how to go about attracting the men, it could be your friend, it could be the guys, probably both. And so I can't say. I'm not gonna lie to her.
Okay, so this comes up actually with clients a lot. If she's dating the same kinds of guys and doing the same things over and over, it's a pattern. So that's when it's a pattern. There's work you have to do to figure out what is it in my self-concept that is drawing me into these guys. Because there's a reason she's attracted them energetically. It's something she believes about herself, and it could be something unconscious she may not even be aware of. She would really need to dig deep and ask herself, like, do I, is it something like I don't get chosen, or I don't believe I deserve to be loved? But there's a lot of stories that women especially hold around being chosen and deserving of love and not being abandoned and rejected that are buried. And if you don't address those stories specifically, the universe is going to send you people that will hurt you in those ways because they're trying to get you to wake up and see that you need to heal that.
Why is there
So there are 2 categories of men. Usually the guys who come to me to get in a situation, and they're guys to maintain a situation. The get part are usually a lot of things we discussed earlier, and that's usually based on, frankly, his lack of understanding of how women see him. Guys have an understanding of how they see themselves, and they tend to go to other men or to women that wouldn't sleep with them and ask them for advice. And I love y'all to death, but y'all are horrible at determining what you're actually attracted to. So until you meet the guy, yeah, I knew that's what I wanted, but like I'm just not feeling it. Why? I don't know, right? And so because of that, it can be tricky for there to be guidance on, okay, what do I do? Then for the more to your question about what are guys struggling with within their dynamics, it's usually, funnily enough, how do some level, some kind of integrity issue. Either saying something that you don't end up following through, and then over time, the woman loses faith in your word. And then if your word means nothing, then her respect for you is gone, and then that trails up, right? And then you have a different kind of guy, which is a different extreme, where he almost puts the woman in the position of a god. And his primary motivation is to not be left. And so, rather than to remain in the relationship, the actual intention is to not end up alone. And so it creates this dynamic of placation. And that also allows the woman to lose respect for him, because the motivation underlying is not the love for her, but the love he receives from her and how he knows that, which is very different. And so a lot of guys struggle long term because they're like, I did all this for her, and I won't get into that, but more or less it's like, that's not how love is actually expressed, like a tally. Well, I did this and therefore she shouldn't have left, because women have their own criteria for what love and value looks like. So there can be a misalignment and projection on that.
Yeah, something similar. It's if they're in a relationship, men come to me because they're struggling with confidence in the relationship, and it's either because their partner is going through their own personal thing. Maybe they fall into depression, or they're sick, or there's something where they're like, I don't know what to do, and it's affecting their confidence, and they really almost give it up. Just they feel like they're kind of just trapped, almost like they don't know how to solve the problem. There's no easy way out, and their partner isn't giving them anything. It's just kind of the silent treatment, or they're not sure what to do. So they're lost. That's been one. Another one is just not being supported by their spouse. That's a big one. The other one is having a partner who has just really high expectations. Like there's relationships would start off one way, and then the partner wants more and more from them. Like they see what other people are getting from their spouses, and they're like, why am I not? You're not affording these things for me too. And that kind of breaks down their confidence. But all these men have in common is also abandonment and rejection wounds from childhood. So, men do suffer with these things too. It's just, I feel like it's not talked about enough, but a lot of men struggle with that. I've had men come in after breakups who are extremely depressed because they think they'll never find love. So it's unfortunate, but rejection and abandonment hits both parties equally as hard. All right, so it's hard to tell when to be vulnerable because some men, if it's gonna last, it's gonna build slow. So that's the thing. Slow and steady wins the race. The pendulum, I always say, swings in both directions equally. There are men who will come on strong at first. If they're toxic, my guess is that they're all coming on, love bombing her, wanting her to be open and vulnerable and just share trauma, share her heartache, share her pain, and then they use it against her and then run away. So these guys exist and they're manipulative. It should be slow and it should feel natural. If anyone ever wants you to be vulnerable and share your life story before the first date, I say run. You don't know if you really connect with somebody until you even meet in person. And even then, it takes a few times to see if there's even something there. But I would say 3 dates. Maybe sure tidbits, but nothing that they can use against you, just to see if they push. If these guys are toxic, they're pushing for her to share pain, sorrow. That's all a red flag. If a guy wants to get to know you, a good man will build you up. They want to know how to serve you. They want to know how they can put you in your best energy, right? Because they want their match. Okay, a man that wants to intrude or impose over you, I feel like they kind of see how they can use things against you and tear you down and then get away, or keep that pattern just consistently going. So it's how are they pouring into her? What is she being vulnerable about in the beginning, and how is it building her up? If she leaves feeling heard and felt and it didn't feel unnatural, like it felt like it was a conversation you could have with anybody, that's good. When it felt like a drain or like that was really intense, that's all, that's just a sign to keep on the lookout for manipulation.
As I said, women are, I don't know, right? But what I generally advise is to just check. There's no specific time of, okay, on day 23, intimacy level for like. But what I find that women would miss is that because of the, I call it infatuation, at times we don't pay attention to how often does what he says and what he does not align. That is the number one thing with a man. How often does it not align? And this is the key thing. How does he respond when it doesn't? Does it bother him or doesn't it? If a dude's words and actions misalign all the time and he doesn't care, everything you do after that, you're gonna see coming. Because you're going to know who you're dealing with by his integrity. Something I share is that our identities are remembered. So your identities are remembered, meaning anything you think of someone is the memory you have of them. And so if the memory of the man is that he is always not doing what he says he's going to do, and excuse, then you're going to get that into the future, especially when he's not in a state that is, you guys are arguing or he's angry, that lack of integrity is going to go through the moon, because if somebody tends to not keep their word, it's usually for one reason, they didn't feel like it. And so how much is he not going to feel like it when he's mad? And that's usually where those extremes of toxic and all kinds of stuff usually emerge. This person was never who they said they were, the signs were never, usually. But that's all I have.
I always tell women to ask whoever you're on a date with, ask them about their exes and their kids. Do they know their kids? How well do they know their children? Do they just give very basic information, like if they do well in school, or do they know like their favorite color, what their activities are, like how invested, how invested are they in their kids' lives? That's one big one. The other one I always tell women is, how do they talk about their exes? Obviously, if your exes, there's a good chance it's not a good situation, but the way they talk about their ex will tell you how they're gonna feel about you when they're triggered. Because toxic guys can get really angry, so if they have a lot of rage towards an ex, and if they don't know their kids that well, that's gonna tell you a lot up front on the first date.
And if they ever say their ex is crazy,
Yes.
immediately know.
Alright, okay. Accountability is the hardest thing for everybody. So if people can handle it, I would tell them, either here's what you're doing wrong or here's what you're missing, because it means that you have to reflect and realizing that a lot of negative circumstances were because of your own choices, they were just unconscious. And people do not want to hear that it's their fault. So if people allow me to say that, I would say that.
My one piece of advice through all the experiments and research we've done would be find alignment in your stated versus observed preferences, and how you can know that is whatever you put on the app or tell your friends you want is your stated, and whatever your friends say that you typically go for as the complaint will be what your observed preferences are. There's usually dysphoria there, and once you realize why that's occurring, you can close the gap and a lot of things become better.
I'll do one for men and women. For men, I'd say that the number one thing I hear guys kind of complain about, which will tick me off, is when external factors are the primary reasons we have failures. Right? So, women this, the market that, blah, blah, blah. That's the element of it where you cannot, it's like going and going, oh, I'm not making money because this is the recession. I'm like, okay, that might be true. Let's take a look under the hood of what's going on with this business before we jump to any conclusions. And I find that the thing that'll tick me off is if a dude is not willing to go under the hood, it's just everybody else's fault. And so that accountability, what Carla's saying, being willing to look in the mirror and say, maybe I have something to do with my results, right? That's kind of everybody, but I usually hear that from men more. For women that say, assessing the man they want based on asking themselves, what do I want to give to the love of my life? Right? Not what I want to get. And you will filter out a lot. Right?
Can you say it one more time? You heard the,
Right. I was like, what do I want to give to the love of my life? Not what I want to get from the love of my life. And I guarantee you'll probably find a lot easier time with men. And women know when they don't want to, I'm not really feeling this guy. So I'm not wasting time with people I don't want to give. And that's real, like, nothing wrong with that. We don't give to everybody equally. You said the intimacy and the desire to do so is a really, 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 really big factor. So if you're not excited about giving to this person, next, yeah.
I got, sorry, really fast one. Don't ask your friends for advice. That's the other one for women. Women, okay, nobody knows what love is. We're all trying to figure out what it means to actually be loved and have real love in our lives. Don't ask your family, don't ask your friends, don't ask your people. They don't know, we don't know, you don't know. You don't know until you're in it. Once you experience real love, that's the only way you know, and you don't know it until you experience it. And people only, women especially, don't know how to look at the actions of men versus the words, like Vidal said. They just hear things and they're like, that sounds great. Women are learning to look at actions, so a lot of women will look, and if they hear things that they like or see appearances that they like, they're gonna say it's perfect, it's your person. They won't look at what's going on behind the scenes or the actions that the man is taking.
Amazing, fabulous, lovely. Guys.
Thank you all so much for the fabulous conversation.